Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you guys for coming to our session. So it's funny because international, it's so massive, and I cannot believe how few people come to these international sessions. I've been speaking on international for years, and yeah, we've got a good group. I'm not complaining or anything, but when you look at, I mean, for example, I had a great slide and I took it out because I was afraid I'd run out of time. And here I am talking about it anyways. And it showed that 100 out of the 100 biggest economies in the world, 37 of those were just companies. You know, that's huge. So, I mean, every company can actually do international. It's not that difficult. Seems difficult, especially when you go into some things that we're going to be talking about, but it really isn't that difficult at the end of the day. And the real growth pattern is growing international, and it's very, very easy to do living here in the US, right? We can just move right into Canada. That is considered international. Move right into Mexico. Okay, so I'm done with my spiel, and I kept telling myself over and over, don't get too chatty, you're never going to get through these slides. And my phone goes off at the perfect time. So I don't know how many people got this new phone, the iPhone, but I just got it the other day, and it feels like I'm carrying around a 50-inch LCD in my pocket. Okay, so let's get going. My name, again, is Michael Bonfils, but you can also say Bonfils, which is the French version, if you speak French, and you're wondering why I'm not pronouncing it right. It's because most people don't understand what I just said, right? They usually say Bonfils or something like that. But it does mean good son, okay? Not good girl, you know? So people try to practice that with me all the time. They come up and say, oh, Bonfils, Bonfils, and I'm like, just say Bonfils. I know it sounds terrible, but it'll stop humiliating me. Anyways, I'm going to be talking about how to launch a site in 50 countries, okay? There's a ton of material here, and I hope that there's some good golden nuggets that you can take away and put into your own practices and think about. I had chopped this down from, I think, 4,000 slides to about 40, and because I wanted to leave some room for you, right? Thank you. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about me and my company. I had started my agency back in 2001 after leaving business.com. I'm an international major. I lived in Europe for many, many years and went to school there. And so I was sitting there, started my new agency, and realized that there was 200,000 other agencies here in the US. And I thought, well, where could I go where I don't have any competitors? And I was thinking about it, and an investor in our company came up and said, you know, I'm closing this office down in China. Would you like to take it over? I'm like, sure, right? They don't speak English. Chinese is an incredibly complicated language, and you've got firewalls and all these other things, and they're also, it's Stone Ages behind us. It's perfect. I'll do that. I'll take it. So we took over this office. I taught them best practices that I had learned over the years on digital marketing. We implemented those practices, and we started really killing it in the Chinese market. And soon enough, the agency for Intel came to us and said, hey, we really need to get into China. Can you help Intel? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So we launched Intel. We moved into mainland China, had a couple offices there in Beijing and Shanghai. Did a great job. They loved us, and then they asked if we can go into Japan. And then I started creating relationships with people in Japan and created an office and a group there that just did an incredible job for us. And we said, okay, let's do Japan. And then it grew. And so our company grew by this demand that we've created for helping agencies launch into these different countries. Eventually, we were in Russia and Korea, Southeast Asia. 2007, our demand went all the way into Europe, and then we started partnering with all types of different agencies, developing that same thing. What are the best practices, and how do we implement them? One thing that I've learned over the years is a lot of agencies directly in these countries are a couple years behind. So that's why I did this. I wanted to make something that actually was very feasible. And by 2010, we were all throughout Latin America as well. Today, we handle a lot of campaigns, and we've got over 20 offices, over 40 languages, over 50 countries that we cover. There's about 370 digital marketing specialists, and I know that sounds like a lot, but if you divide by 21, we're really small. We do work with a lot of freelance contractors and translators. And we work with a lot of agencies. So agencies is actually a big core of our business, but we do have direct clients as well. Okay, let's get going here. On the agenda, I'm going to talk about is really how to take over the world in 3 easy steps. The first step that we're going to go over is planning and identifying your target countries. So this planning stage is really imperative. And this planning stage actually will help you with the other 2 steps. Because this is where we go into market research and keyword research and using data to help us decide what markets to start in. The second is creating your country-targeted website. So we're going to talk about some of the best practices of creating the site. And then step 3 is then marketing that content. So using paid search, social media, display, RTB, and SEO as a combination to actually gain traction. I'm also going to be using a case study. So I wanted to have something that was real world for this presentation. I had USC approach me in August, and they had a specific need. They wanted to get 100 qualified USC candidates to relocate to LA from Brazil. And they wanted to do it with a maximum $75 return on ad spend per qualified candidate. But here's the challenge. There's no brand presence in Brazil at all, right? They had a budget of $20,000, which includes the website to be created, the translation, the content to be developed, and all of the advertising media and our service fees. We had 3 months to build it, launch it, and pay for the ads and run it. And again, they wanted $75 return on ad spend. So I wanted to use this as an example instead of an example with a Hewlett-Packard or somebody who has hundreds of millions to spend, because this is really the reality. It doesn't cost that much to actually successfully launch somewhere into a new place. One big takeaway, if you're going to get anything from me today, this is really it, and it's all about trust. Okay, so if I was a Chinese company, if I created a Chinese company and I just translated in English and I went out and marketed to you and it was just translated, you didn't really quite understand it because it was messed up, didn't know where to put your credit card, would you really feel good about buying from me? Probably not. And believe it or not, Americans are actually more trustworthy than any other nation. When you go into other countries, they're even more specific when it comes to trust. Did you know that Chinese won't even buy from Chinese sites, right? When you go to China, there's a lot of marketing that's going in China, but most people don't buy from the websites. They use the websites for research, and they'll pop over to Taobao to actually do the buying. And Taobao is very interesting. It's a mix between eBay, Amazon, Yelp, and a search engine that's built around trust as a ranking factor, which is incredible. And that, everything that you create, from the keywords, the content on the site, everything that you do has to be built around how do I gain trust with these people in this market. Okay, next step is translocalization methodology. So this is my method for keyword research, and it's also the method that we use with all our clients. And it starts with this, which is translation plus localization plus transcreation, okay? And I'll give you an example. So the word for cell phone in German, if you translated that, it would be mobile telephone, right? That's a direct translation. Fine, but most people actually use handy in the market, right? And if you go one step further, transcreation, other people use Natel because that's a different dialect or a different region of German that uses that. So when you're working with the translator, you may get one translated copy, which is mobile telephone. They may not be able to provide you anything else. And quite often, Google's tools don't provide you with those extra words as well. And it goes deeper into this. So let's talk a little bit about translocalization methodologies, right? One of them, and there are several of them, but alternatively spelled keywords, right? Same words, but use different characters to spell them. For example, Venice in Japanese, there's 4 legitimate ways to spell that word, right? So if you're doing like cheap flights to Venice, that's a big, complicated piece of keyword research. This is even more interesting, Chinese. So simplified Chinese was actually, the written simplified Chinese was actually created in the 40s, right? The late 40s. Well, it moved in so many different areas based on the dialect that nobody could understand it anymore. So they started making grammatical rules and rules for the simplified Chinese written language back in 2008. And if you ever look at a Chinese website, you'll see lots of numbers because numbers can't be translated. So what we find, even for Intel, we would take one keyword and we'd have to translate that, or actually localize that, in 15 different variants for every one keyword. You have 2 words, then you got a problem. Weather forecast in Chinese, I think there's 240 different variants of saying that. So keyword research in itself could be really complicated. Next week's weather forecast in Taiwan is there's 400 variants of that phrase. So another thing, soccer in German. Here's another one. In Germany, you can say Fußball or Fußball, but they're all spelled differently, right? And they debate. Germans have intense debates on which is the correct spelling. There is no correct spelling. They all mean the same thing, but depending on what part of Germany you are or how German you feel you are pretty adamant about that's the way to spell it. And so again, you're not going to get that from a translator because the translator is only going to give you one of these versions, the one they believe in. Keyboard layout. So a lot of keyboards in different languages has many characters per key. So it's very easy for them to drop accents. It's very easy for them to drop certain words or even break up compounds and do all kinds of different things. And you'd be surprised of all the keywords that you actually miss because a translator is not actually doing the right research around what people actually use because something as simple as keyword layout. This is kind of interesting too. Do not assume that English grammar is equivalent to others, right? So we have the word flights. In some languages, they don't have an S. They double it. They say flight, right? Which is kind of interesting. Divergent keywords. This is keywords that have a common idea but a different derivation. So a man builds a house, an Eskimo creates an igloo, desert tribesman builds a mud hut, right? They're all doing the same thing. In some languages, they don't have the different versions, so they have one version. So when you get a keyword copy, a translated keyword copy, you're like, well, why aren't you translating? Everything is the same word. Well, nobody has the same amount of keywords as we do in English, right? Or words as a language. We've got, I think, 750,000 words or something like that is in English language, where Spanish, I think, is around 250 or something like that. So, I mean, there's a lot of words that we have that are completely different to a different language. It may be completely different, it may be the same. Okay. So now we're going to go back to the keyword research and data, and I'm going to start speeding things up. But I did want, this is all very imperative stuff in the beginning to get this right. So keyword research, I took the word cheap flights in Italian, translated that, voli economici. There's 8,000 searches per month. The transcreated word is voli low cost, the Italians use, 250,000 searches per month. You see what I mean? You could actually not be doing well in a country because you're just not targeting the right words. So target the right words, get that done, and once you're done with that, of course, use the tools. I mean, every search engine has tools that can give you the data. Then use other tools like LinkDex, Moz, Authority Labs. There's a lot of great tools out there. Search metrics, all of these will give you some more insight to your competitors and the keywords that they're using. So once you have that list, you build it out. I built that list out for USC. Now we have words that we can use for several things. We can use it for paid search. We can obviously use it for SEO. We can obviously use this as contextual targeting for display. Okay, creating your country-targeted website. So for me, what this is, okay, so language versus country and ccTLDs versus .com versus subdirectory or a subfolder or every different type of variant that you can think of when it comes to creating TLDs and so forth. So one thing that I'm a big advocate of is it goes back to being trustworthy, right? So if you're going to be in France, you want a French website, a .fr. ccTLD is actually the best practice. When you're talking about doing a region, I would never suggest doing Spanish, having, joeschmo.com/Spanish and covering all of Mexico, covering Costa Rica, covering Spain, and in that group. It's not a best practice. You want to try to be as local as possible and have that local feel and really go after those markets. Now, there is kind of some changes to this when you think about really small markets, right? A company that I think just nailed it really well is Xerox. So if you ever look at Xerox's site map, their consumer site map, you'll notice that for all of the countries that they are very, very targeted in, they'll have ccTLDs. And then for the countries that do matter to them, they just are minor, like Andorra or so forth, they'll just have subfolders. Sorry, I'm having some clicking problems here.
There's a clicker right next to you, too.
Did it change? Okay. There it goes. It got stuck. Maybe I was leaning on something here. Okay, creating a microsite. So of course you can make a page or an element within your site. So we're going to get to that in a second. My suggestion is creating a microsite. And when you're launching into a new country, the risk of messing up your own site could be diminished. And it's a lot easier to create a microsite. I also suggest using WordPress. WordPress is very easy. It's very search friendly, very easy to do. And you can use WordPress as a template for other countries. If you're coding content on the same TLD, on your same site, then there's a lot of things that you can do. You've probably heard of hreflang tags. Sorry, this is clipping a little bit, but hreflang tags and canonicalization. These are items that Google's come up with that can help Google understand what pages belong to what language and what country. And it helps divert any potential duplicate content issues. My feeling about attributes is that I'm not sure how long they're going to be around. And I say that because most people utilize these tags incorrectly, and they put them incorrectly. And Google has suggested that most of the time they are bad, and they are incorrect, and they are causing a lot of issues. So I don't know how Google will address this in the future. Maybe they'll just put less and less weight on it and more weight on using webmaster tools as a signal. But it goes also back to what I said before. Use ccTLDs. It's really a great practice to do it. Mobile and responsive design as well. So mobile in other countries is big. A lot of BRIC nations, a lot of third world countries, they predominantly used internet cafes as a way to get to the internet. Now with mobile and cheap mobile devices, the switch from internet cafes to mobile devices is massive, massive. 3 billion people, right? Massive amount of people ever moving over to Swiss. So when you're doing international, think about that. Think about the impact of mobile. Creating your topical theme. Okay, so observe and identify all those target localized keywords. This is actually a standard practice that you probably put in place anyways, and you create your content based on those keywords that you feel are the keywords that are set for your campaign. So handy, right? You're going to develop a site all about handies and German mobile phone page. Another way of creating content, translate your existing content. So I'm not advocating not using translators. I think you can use translators a lot, especially translators when you're building, when you're taking content in your existing site and you've got a massive site and you want to translate that into a different language. Paying a search specialist or a digital marketer to do that would be crazy. So you can translate and then give it to your digital marketer, your SEO specialist in that country, and you'll be able to then address all of the issues around the language. Next thing to do is you use local info. That's a no-brainer. So use local facts and local people, get expert opinions of local people in that country. So you want to go back to that trust factor and really engage with the local audience and build that trust. Emotional storytelling. This is where you can actually take content and then go and have somebody use a product or service of yours in that specific country and then write about their experiences. You can curate a lot of existing assets, right? So if you do infographics or motion graphics or just general content as well, if you do something like that, especially with infographics, make sure that it's not research-oriented to a different market. Because I see that happen before. Somebody actually translated an infographic and all the data was for the US and they were targeting a different country. It made no sense to them. It was really offensive. But something like the Beatles, of course, that's going to be the same thing no matter what country that you put it in. You can also do adding the language on top of your existing English, right? So this is a very common theme that we see with B2B. Because with B2B, quite often, people internationally will search in English, right? So this is a way to address both those that are searching in English and those that are searching in their home language. Next is review your competitors' contents and links. So this goes back to that link analysis. By doing this, now you already had that competitive list when you did the keyword research, but at this point you can then take that list and go after and analyze what content is actually mattering to their companies the most, right? What's making them rank better? What's the content out there that has the most followers? All of these practices are probably practices that you've used in the US market. You can use these same practices in international markets as well. Personally, I like LinkDex, Majestic as well. Both of these are fantastic tools that look at things on an international basis. Another way of getting more content ideas is using question and answer sites and forums, right? So forums is a big way to do it internationally. In China, especially Korea, the entire neighbor is built around Q&A sites and forums in Korea. So believe it or not, forums, these are people that push out ideas, they push out problems, they complain. It's a great way to go scourge through there or have a native specialist scourge through there and find out some really good content that you can address either through content marketing means or something that you can put on your site. Emotional impact content. So there's different levels of emotion depending on the country. And obviously Italians are the way they are and Germans are the way they are. I kind of like this. I think I can play it in here. I'm going to try. So basically what this is, and you can't watch it, but I'll let you watch it without the sound, but it's basically the mountain in Brazil turning into this walking man, and it's making, obviously there's this tons of noise, and all these Brazilians are just going crazy over this mountain and this big gigantic walking man. It's very, very inspirational because it talks to the Brazilians as they are the next big up and coming thing, which is very passionate in their mind. So you can build upon this. So, and it was all done by Johnny Walker. It was a fantastic ad that went out. But you can also screw everything up too, right? And do some content like this, which I thought was kind of funny. Okay, localized usability and content layout. So this is actually very interesting. So this is the UK version of the BBC. This is the Chinese version of the BBC. And you'll notice the content's actually the same, but it is different to the market. So think about that when you're looking at a specific country. How does that country actually engage on the content on the page? And this is where we go into deep usability. Another thing is local perspective usability. So you have a Bank of China who has a credit card offer, a local credit card offer to Hong Kong on the left. And on the right, you have HSBC, who has the exact same credit card offer, believe it or not, also doing the same thing, targeting to local. Well, 75% of the applicants actually use Bank of China, because Bank of China was talking to the local market better than what HSBC was doing. HSBC, when they did the analysis and asked why people went to the other Bank of China instead of HSBC, all the results said because they felt HSBC was too international, right? So you can create your company, and you may fail in a market because you're not speaking to the market, right? You're not. You're just becoming too big and too out of touch with the locals. Culture of photography. This is something else as well. So when it comes to landing pages, in this example, this is a company, this is all about a company, appliance company. It's the same appliance company, right? Two different ads. The one on the left is an ad based on a family in France, because in France, it matters a lot that people and their families cook together. That's very common in France. In England, cooking together as a family is not something that they do. It's not something, yeah, they will do it, but it's not something that's important to them as a culture. Instead, individualism and design is more important to them. So when you're creating landing pages, you've got to think about the mindset of that market as well. And there's so many other things when you go into taxonomy and navigation, different browsing tools, product page information, registration, checking account. I mean, all of these things matter. For example, in Germany, if you don't have the payment tools that they use, the credit cards and the debit cards and the type of accounts that they have that they use in that market, you'll lose them right there at the checkout. So we created the microsite, and we're done for USD. We've got it all up and running. Next thing is marketing your shiny new site. Okay, this is really critical to know as well. So this is something that most people do here, is they start by perfecting your conversions first in your home market, right? You start by SEO, you perfect SEO, you move into paid search, or maybe you're doing paid search and SEO together, and you're perfecting that constantly. And from there, you've probably moved into either portals or different retargeting ideas, move into social media, and then finally into display. This is a very common pattern. When you move into a new market, it's actually in reverse, right? So you perfect the top, you perfect the awareness, you perfect display first. And from there, you get the data. And the data will help you with how you can perfect the engagement through social media. And from there, you can bring that down the funnel into conversions and paid and SEO. So let's go into display real quick. And each one of these are like one slider, so we're not going to be spending a lot. I'm going to get through this, I promise, Ann. 5 minutes, okay. How many people here use RTB or any trading desk technologies or do any display? Okay, so about five of you. So trading desk technologies, especially in other countries, Europe, it's huge. And basically, trading desk technologies are programmatic, what's called programmatic DSPs. It's a very easy way to do display advertising. It doesn't cost much, and you can target just about anything, right? I have a trading desk that's called Traffic Auction. Anybody here wants to play around with it, just shoot me a username and a password you want to use, and I'll shoot you back access to it. So basically, you can take any ad, you can take anything, and go right deep into a specific market. And I'll show you an example of that. Now, trading desks, they reach out to all of the ad exchanges and buy ads that are available in real time. So it's really easy to set up, a lot easier than AdWords. Basically go in, you put in a line item. Line item could be a retargeting line item. It could be a specific campaign. I'm going to go after candidates that are looking to go to USC, right? So that's part of my thing. So I'm doing some specific campaigns that are targeted to audiences there. I'll set my budget. I'll set the bid. I can do either CPM, CPC, or I can do performance-based stuff through a lot of this. Set the contextual targeting. That's where I go and decide, who's going to be the great candidates. These are all built on buckets of websites in a specific market. Then I identify the geographic territory, which is Brazil. I load up my creative, and boom. Okay, so now my site's being launched through display. And most importantly, even if display is not getting the conversions, it's the data that you want. How are people reacting to your landing pages? How are people reacting to the ads themselves? What are the click-through rates? There's so many different variants that you can get. Who and what part of the regions are reacting to the ads. So this data is going to help you go into the next set, which is going into social media, and then seeing what you can do to start engaging audiences. So social media, and when you do social media in different countries and languages, there are some best practices, but for the most part, it's very similar to what we do here. You just don't want to screw up. I've seen some big screw-ups with social media. I had this before with them. I was actually writing this presentation, and I couldn't think of an example. And out on the news showed Starbucks, and Starbucks' big apology to the Irish. Because what happened was, remember the Diamond Jubilee a couple years ago? Well, they had a big promotion, and so they sent out a tweet that said, you've got to be proud that you're British. Let's, say hurrah for the Queen. Everybody can go in and get a discounted copy or whatever the ad was. But the problem was the guy that was running it, he forgot to switch his handle from the Irish side. And obviously the Irish people got very, very upset and became a big shitstorm. So when you do a search, I think it's still there, if you do a search for Starbucks in Ireland, about 70% of the results are all bad-mouthing Starbucks because of that one mistake. So there are things like that, that you can run into, but for the most part, it's similar. Paid search, the same way, right? You want to have those keywords. Paid search is all about that keyword research that you've already done. So from there, you set your ad copy. You can set up your campaigns. Next thing, of course, is SEO. If you want to just do ad tests for a short period of time, you can wait to do SEO until you really get a feel for the market and go into this level. And all of this is exactly the same that you would find here, right? The only difference is global technical audits are different than a specific audit that you would find here, because we are looking for canonical mistakes and sitemap mistakes, language mistakes. So there's a lot of international aspects to an audit when it comes to SEO that we look at that's a little bit different. In terms of on-page stuff, it goes into the wording, which is translated and trans-created content, and making sure that's optimized correctly. And then local-based content marketing. So one thing that I see all the time is your US site is outperforming your UK site, and when you dig a little deeper and you find out that your UK site doesn't have that many British links to it, right? It has US links to it. So you've got to be very careful with links. So when you're doing content marketing, you want to have the links within that country linking to you. And if anybody's linking to your US site, you want them to link to your UK site. Next thing is Attribution Analytics, and Tim did a great job this morning explaining about how impactful this is. So Attribution Analytics is basically looking at how everything together is assisting. And this is just a gold mine of data. And one thing that he did say, and he probably just doesn't know, is that is that it isn't terribly expensive to have tools that can give you this information. One analytic tool that I actually like is called WebTrex, and they're about $5,000 a year. Very good at analytics, but they also do attribution modeling and everything built into it. So they can give you a lot of great insight and data into how is paid assisting organic, or how is display, especially display, assisting all these different areas. So all of these things are really, really good data, and that way you can just give a holistic look of how things are performing. So let's go to our case study results. So the goal was, again, 100 conversions, 3 months, $20,000 budget, $75 return on ad spend. Our budget was actually less. It was $16,000, so we were less than the $20,000 earmark that we were given. We were on time. We built the microsite within 1 month, which was, it was a 10-page site. That's, again, makes it real easy if you use a microsite to test into our market. We had 125 qualified lead conversions and at 56 return on ad spend. So it can be done, and that's, this is a perfect example of somebody who had no presence, and they used everything from display to search to social, right, for a very low amount, and they succeeded at it. So finally, if you do all of this and repeat it 50 times, then you're in 50 countries. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, I'm just going to move this over. Thank you so much, Michael. It's easy, right? And they brought it in under budget and exceeded the goal, right? Exceeded the objective, which was really cool. Now, Zeph Snapp from Altura Interactive will take us on a romp through Latin America as soon as we get it back up on the screen. Does anybody have a question while he's doing that? A question for Michael?
Yeah.
Yep, okay. Then
Let me just see if this is.
there, that looks good, right? Okay.
Great.
Great.
Oh, thank you. Hi, guys. Yeah, I know this is the last session of the day. I know everybody's really tired. I'm gonna run through basically what we decided at the beginning of this was he was gonna go first. He had what he had, and after seeing that, I was like, so what am I gonna talk about? He covered the whole thing. But our specialty is Latin America. My company's called Altura Interactive. We're in Mexico, and we focus specifically on doing digital marketing for US and international companies that are looking to get into Latin America. When we think about international stuff, one of the big problems that I have is that people say, well, it's not applicable to me. My company doesn't need that, right? And in some cases, that's true. But in most cases, you're going to need it eventually, right? You're going to top out wherever you are, and you're going to need to find a different way to gain an advantage against someone in one of your competitors, or you're simply going to run out of people to sell to, and you're going to need some more. So we both kind of have a similar framework, so you'll see some of the same stuff, and I'll probably, if it's the same, I'll just rip through it and we won't even talk about it. If you guys want to go deeper in Q&A, I'm glad to do that as well. So if you're choosing a language and it's entirely up to you, a lot of times this is going to be a business decision, not a marketing decision. But if it is your decision, you're going to need to do research beforehand. Now, I work for a company that focuses on Spanish, so of course, I'm going to tell you that Spanish is the most important language, right? It stands to reason. But I've got some data for you, so that'll help. Almost 13% of the people who live in the United States, according to the 2010 census, speak Spanish at home. And it's the second most spoken language in the world behind Chinese. That being said, less than 5% of the web today is in Spanish. There's a crap ton of users. That's a technical term. I don't know if you get that. There's a lot of people who speak Spanish in Latin America who are coming online. And the growth numbers are really promising. And so we're in third place on this one, but it's close. Plus, there's a lot less languages in Latin America to deal with than in Asia Pacific or in Africa, which makes it simpler. We also over-index for spending time on our computers. We spend a lot of time on our computers compared to other places. Now, the thing that's interesting about this is that the search engine result pages in Latin America, well, right now, what happened was a guy named Gianluca Fiorelli, who does Spanish language and Italian SEO, he wrote a post where he complained about how bad the SERPs were in Latin America post-Hummingbird. And basically, his main complaint was that you were seeing sites that had no business ranking. Like you'd see a Venezuelan site ranking in Spain, and you'd see a Spanish site ranking in Mexico. And that this made no sense. And my first instinct when I saw it was like, you're wrong. There's no way that can be right. They haven't screwed it up that badly. So we went and got a bunch of data. And it's in a post here. It's information that you can download. We looked at 10 keywords per ad vertical that Google has. There are 22 ad verticals that they cover. So we looked at a little over 6,000 positions, and what we found was that you were more likely to rank with a top-level domain, like .com, versus having a country-level domain. And that almost as many incorrect country domains were ranking as correct. So that would be like a .mx site ranking for a term in Spain, or a Venezuelan site ranking in Venezuela. So it was like 13% on both sides. Now, I know that's not necessarily true for the whole world, but in Latin America, it appears that Google is basically taking the Spanish language results and just kind of throwing them all in the same pot and saying, well, you know, let's see how it goes. I've been told that Pigeon is supposed to be helping with this, but I haven't collected enough data to see that. So one of the things that we talk about, and actually the US is the same way. So we just talked about 13% of the US population speaks Spanish, right? And here, so actually here I want to go back. This is Mexican Google. The third result is a page from Spain that will never ship to Mexico. Then for the US, you have the same situation, only it's worse, right? You've got Best Buy at the top, and this is electric chimneys. I know that's a little bit of a fringe product, but all the rest of the results are from other countries. Companies that would never ship to the United States. All right, so we see there's a need. Basically what I'm saying is all of you guys, if you optimize your websites and you do it the right way, there's a big, big opportunity to improve the user experience and make a bunch of money. And I think we all like money. At least I hope so. So when you're trying to decide, you can go into your Google Analytics data, you can see the browser, you can see the language that people are using, you can look at the location, you can look at your top referral sites. All these things will indicate to you what kinds of, what languages should be of most of interest to you. Michael talked quite a bit about keyword research, so I'm not going to go too deep, but let's see. Okay, Alchemy API. If you don't have a good English language keyword list, you can use the Alchemy API to rip all of this out of your current site and use it for your localization experts. So you pull those out of your individual pages, you map those terms to the pages themselves, get those translated localized, and voila, you've got a great keyword list. Of course, you can also do that in GA and in Google Webmaster Tools. You can then have those terms translated. I really like the way you broke down the terminology of translation versus transcreation versus localization. Uber suggests another one that we have in common that we both like. A lot of people now like keyword.io, but it has been my experience that it's for Spanish at the very least, it's an inferior tool just for that. In English, it's much better. The other one that we use a lot for competitive research is SEMrush. They've been making a big push in international lately. You can do a lot of interesting things there. The one tip I give you is that a lot of companies are taking Michael's advice and setting up individual CCTLDs. So if you're doing competitive research, make sure that you're looking at their language-specific or country-specific site, not their main site, to find those terms. Okay, you can use proxies to search as if you're in another language, but this is just an easy way. You go in, you configure your language, and voila, you're going to get all the Google Instant terms in that language. So it's another way of finding more terms. And it's a piece of cake. It takes 5 minutes. Then, of course, you can go to the other search engines. And you can go to Google Trends, which I like. With Google Trends, if you're going to create a Spanish language site for the US, you can use Mexican results as a proxy, because you're probably not going to have the keyword volume that you like in order to really understand the terms. But 80% of people who speak Spanish in the United States are from Mexico. So you can use those sort of as a way of kind of like breaking it down a little bit better. It's not going to be perfect, especially if you know you got a website for a deli in New York, but you know if you're going after California and Texas, you're going to be in good shape. Florida's another one that's an exception. You can actually break down the Google Trend stuff to the city level, which is useful in any language. And you can use that to find additional keywords. Now here's where it actually gets really fun. So you've got word reference that's going to help you translate the terminology, but this site is the one that we have the most fun with. It's called asiablamos.com, and it basically breaks down all the slang synonyms for any term in Spanish, which is really, really useful. If you don't get anything else out of this today, like when you do Spanish, you want to have this site available to you. It's really good. Then you take it to Lingui to verify that you're using it correctly in context. So you put it in, and it gives you examples of how that word, how that term would be used in a specific sentence, so that you can make sure, it basically gives you a way to, you know, understand the word itself, but then also validate that your translators are doing a good job with their ad copy and their use of the word in context. And then, of course, you have the Spanish dictionary, which is great. Then, I mean, you want to do the same thing you're doing in English, right? You want to break things down so that you're looking at your keyword sets, but you're looking at the modifiers that are going to result in the action that you care about. And then you build your giant keyword list. Unfortunately, in Spanish, we have not seen as much of an effect from an entity perspective, so you do end up having to optimize on a keyword level rather than understanding that, you know, home, house are the same thing, but hopefully that'll come down the chute soon. You put in the tool, you get your volume, and you move on. So, okay, this is actually going to be a place where Michael and I differ a little bit in our opinion, and that's partially a function of my specific focus on Latin America and the type of companies that I work with. So, what we've found is that CCTLDs are great for a lot of companies, especially if you have physical locations. And like Xerox sells a physical product that they distribute to physical places, right? But a company like Shopify doesn't, right? They sell a virtual product that you go in and you buy online. And so for them, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for them to have country-specific websites for every country in Latin America. They need one Spanish language website that's going to serve everyone. So, you know, if you're Pizza Hut, you need a CCTLD. If you're, you know, Salesforce, you just need a Spanish language site. The other nice thing about using, well, if you're doing a CCTLD, you're basically starting over from an SEO perspective. Your domain authority is going to be 0 when you get started. And that kind of sucks, right? The same study I was talking about was to prove that you did need CCTLDs to rank, and we found that was not the case. Subdomains are a favorite of a lot of the companies that we work with because they're concerned about security. They don't want to give access to their back end to a company that doesn't belong to them. And so if they put it on a subdomain, they can give you different access point to access basically a new site without them having to build out all those CCTLDs. We also see a lot of companies that will buy the .es and use that as a de facto top-level domain, which is fine too. But my preference is if we're really just trying to prove concept and get started and really build some search traffic right away, I prefer the subfolder to get started. Okay, Reflang he covered pretty well. I'm not going to get too far into it. You can look at the deck later if you like. This is just kind of a step-by-step of how you would set it up. And the different ways that you can do it. But what I do like is this one. Okay, so this feels like kind of a dumb, actually really like this slide. I like board games. So anyhow, if you had to guess, how many people in this room would say that it's UK is the proper markup? Nobody? Oh, that's great. Oh, I'm sorry? For region. Right. Nope. It's Great Britain. This is the most common mistake that we see with Reflang, right? Is people making this type of mistake, right? People putting BZ instead of BR for Portugal, or for Brazil, right? These are the kind of mistakes you see a lot. The other thing that you have to do is it has to be self-referential. So you have, even on the English language site, you have to put in that this is the English language site, which translates into these other 4. No, you don't? All right. This is a tool that we built to generate the reflang markup so that you can just grab this, put it in your region, and go to town. And then it also validates it for you. And the nice thing about this one is that it doesn't just tell you, a lot of these tools just say, yes, there is reflang markup on this page. This one tells you exactly what the markup is so that you can see if you implemented it correctly and you're targeting the country that you like. And that's free. It's on nudo.io, which is just something we built for fun, actually for MosCon. All right, so translating your site. We, like Michael, we really believe that documentation is really important. So we think that before you translate your site, you need to build style guides so that people can really understand what it is that you're doing in English, so that you hand that to your translator and you say, this is the context that you're working in, this is the way that you're going to address users, these are the things you're not allowed to talk about, or the ways that you shouldn't express yourself. And in Latin America, there's a lot of different ways of speaking Spanish. So you have to think about, in that context, how you're going to address people. Are you going to be more informal? Are you going to be more formal? What type of Spanish are you going to use? Are you going to go for something universal like what Shopify does, or are you going to be very specific and go after Venezuelan Spanish, or Nicaraguan Spanish, or Mexican Spanish, or Spain Spanish? And that can change quite a bit based on the country as well. Okay, how are you actually going to get the translation done? There's a lot of options. Machine translation should not be one of them. Actually, Google has said that they will de-index your page if they detect that you've done a machine translation. So don't do it. And I've seen that in the wild, so I really mean it. Don't do that. But it is really cheap. The other thing you can do is you can crowdsource. The other thing you can do is you can crowdsource your translation. And Ubuntu has done that. WhatsApp has done that. But you really have to have a really strong international community in order to get that done. It's going to be difficult for a small organization to do. You can also go with freelancers, but you can find good ones. But it's difficult because you may not be able to use the same one because they might be busy during a specific project. So we find that it's better to find a company that can help direct that. As Mike was saying, it can get expensive to have a marketing company translate your entire site. It doesn't make sense for everybody. But when you have like pages that you know are designed to sell, it's better to have a marketer working on those than it is for a translator, because that's just not their job. We have a saying in Spanish. It's lo barato sale caro. What it means is going cheap can be very expensive. All right, so translation. One of the things that people ask us about a lot is whether you should translate your URLs. And this is a tough one. I'm only thinking of Spanish here, right? So like if you have a Croatian website, this is probably going to be different for you. But what we've seen is that for very big websites, it's usually good to not translate the URLs, because that way you can bundle them for attribution on page level in Google Analytics. Whereas if you translate them, they're all individual pages, and the tagging of it gets really complicated. On the other hand, if you just have like a microsite that you have to hire people, then in that case, you translate those because it doesn't matter, right? There is a corresponding page that you need to be concerned with. Content itself. You want to think about your priorities. John Henry actually used this exact same slide this morning. I was like, oh! That's a risk. That's a possibility. You need to think about your personas. You need to rebuild them, because they could very well be different in other countries and in other cultures, right? Here you might be for middle-aged people, and Latin America you could be for young people, depending on what you're targeting. So think about that. These statistics are all basically about, like we're moving into, this is video. Video is a really big deal in Latin America, just as big as it is here, if not more so. I can vouch for the fact that like people in internet cafes spend ridiculous amounts of time on YouTube. And they use it for playlists and music. It becomes like their own internal Spotify. So we're going to talk about this. Product pages. Again, this is the place for a marketer, right? You don't want a translator working on your money pages. You want a marketer to come in and tell you how to create copy that's designed to sell. Your cart, which is something that Michael addressed as well. If you don't translate your cart, if you don't have local currencies, you're going to have a lot of trouble selling your product. And I know a lot of companies that actually have to change their pricing structure for other countries, specifically because they're not going to do the conversion and sell it for 1,400 pesos, they're going to do it for 999, so the pricing works the same way. Blog content. We found this to be a very successful tactic. It's especially if your core website ranks for terms in English, you can translate usually about 80% of your blog posts, and you'll see those rank fairly quickly. The thing you have to be careful about is, again, how you're addressing users, and specifically, like, does the data, do the links go to things that are local rather than the country of origin. Then you go after your most successful content pieces, see things that are ranking for you in English, and you go after those terms as well. For Shopify, the favorite for them is the guided dropshipping, which is, it's funny because dropshipping actually is not as relevant a term in Spanish as it is in English, but yeah, they love it anyways. Email marketing. A lot of people forget about this, and it's crazy, right? They build the entire site in Spanish. They'll get the cart, and then every follow-up email is in English, and they don't divide their list so that they can send Spanish language to people who sign up in Spanish. So make sure that you divide your list as well. Another one that I really like is subtitling video. If you don't have the budget to create all new videos for a new region, you can subtitle them, create a transcript in the new language, and those will rank very quickly. Mobile, as Michael discussed, is also really important. It's in a lot of cases the device that people use the most. It's the one they can afford, or that they're willing to spend the money on because they're going to be able to use it more often. And as you can see, Latin America, well, yeah, they're keeping the crap out of it. Connect 4. How are they going to win here? So we actually took those pictures. That was fun. Yeah, social media, kind of important. 95% of people who are on the internet have a social media profile. And of those, pretty much all of them are on Facebook. Like, Facebook is used by local businesses. People use it instead of a website. People are actually still setting up personal profiles for businesses and then using those to spam people, which is funny to see. Yeah, so if you're not doing any marketing on Facebook in Latin America, you're marketing the wrong tree. You translate the content. This is something we've been playing with lately. We've seen that you can actually have translated content on the same Facebook page. And I haven't quite figured out how Avon is doing this, but I'm really interested. Maybe we might think of something. Gotcha, thank you. I'm kind of speaking long here, so we'll be all right. Also, we finished a little early. I know that's okay. Everyone's eat. It's been a long day. Translating the existing campaigns, Michael covered that really well, so I won't bother with it too much. But paid social is a big deal. And as Michael said, a lot of the best practices are the same as they are here. But the thing that we found that's really interesting is that the ads on the right actually are not as bad as they are in the US. You can get some decent conversion rates on those, especially for ads that look like ads. It's kind of crazy. For Twitter, we found that videos are usually the most effective ads. All right, this is kind of my favorite part. We call it digital PR. A lot of people call it outreach. And we have specific processes that we've built that nobody else has really, that I haven't seen anywhere else. So here we go. All right, Link Respector, that's built by Garrett French and Citation Labs, is really excellent. We help them translate their footprints, which basically is the way of them. It's just a way of aggregating Google searches without having to actually go do them, and you just get to download them all into an Excel, into an Excel spreadsheet, and these are really great. All right, then for qualifying, we use SimilarWeb, we use domain authority, and then we're also looking at inbound links using Localized or Ahrefs. A lot of people come in, they're like, well, we're only going to reach out to sites that have domain authority of 40 and up. I'm like, whoa, so we're going to be done in like a week. You have to think about, number one, that these are sites that can be growing, right? And number two, like it has to pass the eye test, right? You don't want a site that has no authority at all, but it might be a blog that just started. It might be, and so give people the benefit of the doubt. And SimilarWeb is actually a really great tool for that because you can see where their traffic is coming from. So you can be be like, oh, so 6% of their traffic is from Mexico, and we're going after Mexico, so that's a really nice thing for us. What we found too is that, like I said, they're dumping all the results in the pot and just serving them. So as a result, doing links by language in Latin America is a better strategy than by country. So you don't have to get links from the .mx domains. You can get links from .es, from .cl, and they're going to be effective. They're going to help you rank. Reaching out, this is stuff I don't share because we're really good at reaching out and converting at a high level, and that's sort of our IP. So if you hear about that in Paris, I'd love to tell you. We personalize our outreach. We also built a contact finder. This is part of our IP that we do give away, which I don't know if we should, but basically what we found is that reaching out to companies and blogs via their contact page in Latin America is much more effective than reaching out via anything else. So we go contact page, email, Facebook, Twitter as the main ways that we reach out to people. So on nudo.io, you put in a site that gives you in Spanish. I should specify this is for Spanish language. It's not working the same way in English or in Portuguese or in any other language. But you put in the website, it pulls up the contact page, and then you click on the URL, and it opens it up for you, and you can just drop it in. Paid social for outreach. I've talked about this before. It's one of my favorite nuggets. Like, what you do is you do a paid campaign, and you target bloggers or journalists in your niche, and you serve that content to them, and it's just as good as sending them an email. They see it in their stream, and even if it's an ad and it's relevant to their interest and they give a crap about it, they will pick it up. And we've gotten some great coverage by using this tactic. So that's it. That's what I've got. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to be here, especially this late, especially with so many other great sessions. And yeah, I'd love to hang out with Michael and answer some questions.
That was great. Tom, if you want to grab the handheld, we have questions, and whoever asks the first serious question can get a copy of the book, which I'll be happy to sign. So who's got a question? It's a lot of information. There's 300 pages in this book. They tried to cover it in an hour and 15 minutes. So there's a question over there. Lady in the beautiful blue azure shirt.
Thank you. So the company I work for, we have 10 individual language sites. So I just want to ask about. I just want to ask about the any advice for hosting. Hosting, yeah, for the different international sites. So right now, I think we have them. We have servers like on a cloud.
We're using Media Temple, their Pro CDN.
The Pro CDN package. So I'm wondering about the hosting, and then also specifically for China, because I know China has the great, firewall. And
Great
do you need
question.
to host inside China, or is Hong Kong close enough? Anyway, if you have any advice on any of those things, I would be very grateful.
That's you.
Okay. So, is this working? Can you guys hear me?
It works fine.
Okay, so let's address a couple things. I mean, you could probably address the hosting. Would you host for Latin America? Would you host in the U.S. that would cover Latin America, or would you get something in the
I find that most of the sites, even local sites, are hosted by like HostGator and GoDaddy, and so it's I haven't seen it as a strong ranking signal in Latin America, but
Yeah, can
Yes,
you
of course.
get in
I'm
the
sorry.
mic, Zeph?
I have not seen local hosting as a strong signal because a lot of local sites have their websites hosted by GoDaddy or HostGator or other or WP Engine. That's been my experience, but I don't know about Michael.
Okay, so
And China.
I haven't. Well, we'll get to China in a second, but I mean everything else. I look at speed. So speed is a factor, right? Speed is a big factor. When it comes to China, Baidu in itself, the search engine in China, speed is a major ranking factor, for one. For two, most people don't have good connections in China anyways. For them to connect to anything outside the Great Firewall is very difficult. They have poor connections. They have the worst connectivity anywhere in the whole world than the Chinese do. So now they've got bad connectivity. They can't get past this firewall. So your best bet is to actually get hosting in China. Well, there's a problem now with that, because to get hosting in China, you have to have a company there, right? And you have to get a company there, then you've got a whole different variant of problems. The Chinese government, for example, they make everybody get a license, and you have to go fill out these forms. You've got to prove that they have somebody that they can go and basically throw in jail if you put anything wrong on that site, right? So they make it very, very difficult. Best practice, though, hosting in China. That's the best practice. You can, if you're not doing China, if you're doing all of Southeast Asia, you can get by just fine with having something in Singapore, having something in even Hong Kong or Japan. You pretty much be able to be fast enough. You know, I actually prefer regional hosting boxes, so something that covers all of Latin America. You don't have to have one in every country. Something that's over in Europe. You know, I think that's the best practice.
So if you're going to host in China, are there agents that can help you do that? Because I've seen Michael's presentation on hosting in China, and it's like 5 slides of really complicated stuff.
Yeah.
Of the hoops they make you jump through, basically, as he said, so they can have a person to blame if they don't like what's on the site. So would you go to an agent in China to help you get a...
agencies that have offices in China. I'm not trying to plug myself. I'm really careful with that. But,
oh, that's okay.
You know, it's, yeah, you did a lot, right? So, yeah, it's interesting because Baidu is not really a company that sells directly to anybody. They actually work with tons and tons of agencies. And it's very funny because I see agencies that come out here in the US and they say they're the exclusive agency for Baidu, which is... There's 200,000 exclusive agencies for Baidu. So, and if you dig deeper in that, they'll say, well, I'm exclusive on this street, right? And so there's no other Baidu agency on my street. But yeah, using an agency is one workaround. Having an office there is another big one. If you have a client, if you have an office, you have somebody on the ground there who can actually help with the paperwork. Also, there's what's called an ICP license, right? This ICP license allows you to advertise, it tells the government in China that you are authorized and you're not going to put anything bad on your pages, on your content there. So that's critical to have that. ICP license on Baidu is a ranking factor, right? So, yeah, I know, it's very interesting.
Is there a good source for information on that? Talk to you, I know, but besides that, on how to do that in China?
I mean, there's, yeah, and I'm so mad at myself now, but thankfully I took it out or I would have talked longer, but I took a whole section of, all the best practices around China with some really good links on my deck. So, what I could do is I can put that back on my deck.
Put that back in for the version that's online.
You can do that, because I've got some great links in there from all kinds of different companies that just explain exactly what are the steps to get the licenses, how to do hosting, all of that stuff.
Zeph, you had a comment.
Yeah, I wanted to ask,
Can you lean in the mic, please?
Oh, yeah.
Because we get a machine back here rattling and
my question
noise.
was, for hosting, we've actually run into a lot of problems in Latin America finding good hosting that actually fixes things quickly and responds well. Do you have any recommendations? Do you have any companies that you like working with there?
I mean, I'd have to look. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head.
In the mic, please.
I'd have to look. So, I'll get back to you. I mean, I know there's a couple of them. I can't think of them at the top of my head.
We have another question over here, and we've just got time for one question.
Okay, so which is worse, not having a local presence at all in a country, or having local content but all in English?
Local content, but all
address, phone number, local contact information, even maybe local product information, but it's in English. Or no local content at all. They just have to go to your U.S. or global
It's
site.
better to have English content in a country than having bad translated content in a country. It's way worse. It goes back to what I said originally. Would you trust somebody? It'd be better if just have it done right. Yeah. And that's very common. In B2B, it's very, very common.
But what we also know is, particularly in technical, high tech, people will search in English. And they'll search in English, use English terms, and expect English content often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to add that we got a client where we are pushing their English content into Mexico, but we're doing it through paid means, and we're only targeting English searchers and people have their settings in English. And it's a small incremental value, but it's there.
I was going to say what she said. So.
I'm sorry.
No, that's
You can say it again. You can have the last word.
I don't need the last word. I'm just glad. I'm excited to just be here.
Well, we're very excited to have both of these guys here to introduce you to Global. Catch up with them later, if you have more questions. I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you. It is now time to take a break and then go for our final keynote, which is Facebook, the ambiguity of it all. So I hope to see you all upstairs. Please give our guests a hand, and thank you for being here.